What happens when you're chosen for a destiny you didn't ask for? When your yes changes generations, and your silence hides 1,000 emotions. Welcome to Biblical Stories, where we give voice to the silent strength of women behind the thrones. Subscribe and walk with us through the lives that shaped faith, history, and legacy.
My name is Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, sister of Laban, wife of Isaac. But none of those titles ever truly captured who I was inside. People remember me as the woman who helped water the camels. The bride who left her home overnight to marry a man she'd never met. But that's only the beginning. You see, I wasn't just part of a love story, I was part of a promise. And sometimes, when you're part of a promise, your life is no longer your own. I was chosen. That sounds beautiful, doesn't it? But chosen doesn't always feel easy. Sometimes, being chosen feels like being caught between what you want and what must be done. I still remember that moment by the well. The man's eyes watched me closely, like he was searching for more than kindness, like he was searching for destiny. I didn't know it then, but that water I poured for his camels would carry me far from everything I knew. My family, my land, my language. I said yes. Boldly. Maybe too quickly. I didn't ask about the man I'd marry. I didn't ask if he was gentle. I didn't ask if he loved God. I just went. I was brave. Or maybe just young. Either way, the next chapter of my life began not with a crown, but with a caravan. Isaac, he was quiet. Gentle, yes. But haunted. His eyes held the weight of something I couldn't name at first. It took me years to understand the shadow he carried. The moment he met me, he brought me into his mother Sarah's tent. That was his way of honoring her, I think. Or maybe holding on to what he lost. He had known grief too early. And I had known freedom. And suddenly, I was part of a story much older than me. A story about promises made under stars. About a God I had only heard whispers of. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be everything he needed. But sometimes, love isn't enough to quiet someone's ghosts. I prayed. I cried. And then I waited. For a child. For a purpose. For something that would anchor me to this strange new life. And when the time finally came, when my womb stirred with life, it wasn't peace that followed, it was war. A war inside me. 2 sons, wrestling before they were even born. The struggle shook my body and my soul. I asked the Lord, if it is to be this way, why do I live? I wasn't just carrying children, I was carrying nations. And suddenly, motherhood wasn't sweet, it was sacred. Heavy. Prophetic. I wasn't ready. But ready or not, I had become a battlefield. Then came the word. A prophecy, quiet and strange, the older shall serve the younger. I didn't understand it fully, but I knew one thing, I had to protect what was coming. I had to watch. To wait. And when the time came, to act. Isaac loved Esau, our firstborn. Rugged. Wild. Everything a father could admire. But I saw something in Jacob. A hunger. A softness. A spark of something divine. I didn't choose favorites. At least, I didn't mean to. But it's hard not to lean toward the one who looks at the world like you once did, with curiosity and vision. They call it manipulation. Deception. They say I tricked my own husband. But they don't know what it's like to carry prophecy in your chest. They don't know the burden of knowing something must happen, and watching time slip away. I didn't do it out of ambition. I did it because I believed. I believed in what God had whispered. I believed in Jacob's calling. And yes, I helped him. I helped him become what he was meant to be, even if it meant hurting the one I loved. If that makes me wrong in their eyes, so be it. I wasn't trying to win approval. I was trying to obey something older and louder than my fears. When Jacob ran, it tore me apart. My baby. My boy. Sent away because of a choice we made together. I told him to flee, to protect himself from Esau's rage. But who would protect me from the silence that followed? Isaac didn't speak of it. Not directly. I think he knew. I think, deep down, he felt the shift. But we never spoke of the cost. Some things are too painful for words. So I lived with the ache. The ache of a mother who sent her son away. The ache of a wife whose secrets changed the course of a family. I was never royalty. No crown ever touched my head. But I influenced kings before they wore their titles. I shaped destinies before they were born. That's the strange power of women like me. We move quietly, but our decisions echo for generations. I may not be remembered like Sarah or honored like Rachel. But without me, there would be no Israel. No 12 tribes. No legacy to wrestle with angels. I wasn't loud. But I was present. Strategic. Devoted. And sometimes, just sometimes, the ones who stand behind the thrones are the ones truly holding them up. In the end, I don't regret loving fiercely. I don't regret trusting what I believed God had said. My life wasn't perfect. I made choices that others still question. But I was part of something divine. Something eternal. And though the world may only remember the names of men, heaven remembers the women who shaped them. If I could speak to you now, dear daughter, I'd say this: don't fear the weight of your calling. Even when it's misunderstood. Even when it costs you comfort. The promise is worth the pain. And your obedience will speak louder than your silence ever could. So now, my story is yours. Carried through time, whispered between verses, hidden in footnotes, but never forgotten. I was Rebekah. I left everything behind. I followed a stranger into a destiny I didn't fully understand. I became a mother, a protector, a keeper of promises. And if you've ever felt torn between what you want and what you're called to do, then maybe, just maybe, my story is also yours.
Stick around for the final part of Rebekah's untold journey. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear the silent strength of biblical women. Subscribe to Biblical Stories and walk with us again soon.
The years passed. My hair grew silver, my hands thinner, and the tent quieter. Isaac spent more time resting, lost in memories and prayer. And me. I spent my time watching, remembering, carrying every moment like a stone in my chest. Sometimes, I wondered what happened to Jacob. Did he still remember me? Did he still believe in the promise? I hoped so. I prayed that every step he took in that distant land would lead him back home one day. Because a mother never forgets. No matter how many seasons pass. No matter how many miles come between hearts, love remembers. I often walked the edges of the camp at dawn, watching the sky shift from violet to gold. That silence before the world wakes up. It became sacred to me. A time to breathe. To speak with the God I had grown to trust. Not through loud words or perfect prayers. Just through presence. Through longing. Through surrender. I had learned that destiny doesn't always shout, it often whispers. And it's in those early, still moments that I felt closest to him. No roles. No weight. Just Rebekah. Just me. Some women rule with crowns. Others with quiet conviction. I never held a scepter. But I held something stronger, faith with teeth. The kind that bites through disappointment. That clings to hope even when your heart feels fractured. You see, faith isn't always light and beautiful. Sometimes it's gritty. Messy. Desperate. And yet, somehow, it keeps you standing. That's what kept me going all those years. Not perfection. Not applause. But the deep, relentless belief that God was still weaving something, even when I couldn't see it. Esau came to me once, years after the deception. His face was worn. His eyes softer. Time had softened his anger, but not his pain. "Why, mother?" he asked. "Why him?" I didn't give him a perfect answer. I gave him a hug. A real one. One that said I still loved him deeply. I always had. Choosing Jacob wasn't about rejecting Esau. It was about trusting a call I didn't create. That's the hard part of obedience. It doesn't always make sense to the people you love. But if I could go back, I think I'd still do it. Not because it was easy, but because it was right. One night, I found myself staring at the stars, the same way Abraham once did. I wondered if those same stars had watched over Jacob, far from home. Had he looked up and remembered me? Had he told stories of his mother's courage or her mistakes? It's strange, how motherhood is full of invisible threads. We tie them to our children with every word, every prayer, every sacrifice. They may travel far, forget our faces, even question our choices. But those threads, they hold. Even when stretched by time. Even when tangled in regret. There's something they never tell you about being part of a divine plan. It can feel incredibly human. There are no angelic choirs announcing your decisions. No golden halos making things clearer. Just a heart trying to listen. And sometimes, you don't know if you're walking by faith or just fumbling in the dark. But you keep walking. Because something inside you tells you it matters. That your obedience, even in the quiet, even in the confusion, is part of something holy. They wrote about Isaac. They wrote about Jacob. But I want you to know, I was there. Not as a background character. Not as a footnote. But as a pillar. Holding the tension. Holding the family. Holding the promise. And I see you, too, the woman watching this, wondering if anyone sees your part in the story. Let me be the voice that says, yes. You are seen. You are heard. Your choices matter. Even when they go unnoticed. Even when they don't fit the mold. God uses the bold. The brave. The broken. Just like He used me. I never got to see all the fruits of my choices. I never held Jacob's sons in my arms. But that's the thing about generational impact, it often grows in soil you won't stand on. I had to trust that the seeds I planted would bloom in places I'd never go. And isn't that faith? Believing not just for your own life, but for the lives that will come after you. That's what it means to leave a legacy. Not through fame, but through faithfulness. Now, as my story closes, I think back to that girl at the well. Brave. Kind. Unafraid to act when destiny knocked. If I could speak to her, I'd say, it won't be easy. You'll make mistakes. You'll break hearts, including your own. But you will walk with God. And through your story, nations will be born. That girl never imagined she'd help shift history. But that's the beauty of it. You never know what one act of obedience can set in motion. One cup of water. One step into the unknown. One whispered yes. So here I am. Rebekah. Not just a wife. Not just a mother. But a woman who said yes when it counted. My voice may have been forgotten in some stories, but I'm speaking now. And if you hear anything from me, let it be this: your role matters. Your voice matters. And your faith, it might just shape the future.
If this story reached you, share it with someone who needs to remember the power of obedience. Subscribe to Biblical Stories and come back next week for another voice that history almost silenced, but heaven never forgot.